You're on Orange Gum with Wendy T and Hope Skibitsky. And
Yeah.
oh, sorry, say hi, Wendy, because I talked over you.
Oh, hey everyone.
Uh,
Welcome.
this is our part two. So our last episode was us kind of talking about, is the grass really greener?
Hmm.
And so this is us kind of, continuing that combo.
We're taking the rope and like pulling you back off over that cliff.
Yeah, yeah, because I know some of you've been slipping.
Everybody's been like, we're waiting.
Tell us what's happening. Yeah, so last time we explored a little bit about perception, us seeing somebody's other side and thinking it's greener. But, hopefully, if people are just good people, they're not showing you all their dirty laundry. So it may look greener, even if
Mhm.
it's not.
That's right. And sometimes I think, the grass is greener where we water it.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
that's true.
And sometimes what we focus on is what thrives. And so also what we focus on can also die.
Yes. And every time I go to get like a second helping of ice cream or something, and Justin's like, so weren't you just talking about wanting to get into the gym or, and I'm like, okay, right. Like sometimes, like, what are you doing to try to make a situation better? What are you doing to just lament over a thing and not necessarily work on it? So obviously every situation is like part, what can you do? And then part, what do you have no control over?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I
And
think, go ahead. Sorry, you go.
I think that you having a Justin is super helpful to, be that resounding voice that can be like the balance. And, having a good friend in a relationship that's a good truth teller can be that good balance. And then sometimes when it's just you have to be the voice of reason to walk through a thing and say, what's reality here? And what, like to your point, what's in the circle of control and what's not. And so what does my action plan look like?
So tangentially, I think what you just mentioned is one of the things that I appreciate most about some of the conversations that you and I have is we will often say, well, I'm just going to give you my side because this is what I know to be true. It's my perception. Obviously, I'm going to give you my emotional side of the thing. That doesn't necessarily mean it's the whole truth because there's another side. And I appreciate that when you and I have those conversations where we're feeling really like upset about a thing, that we say, hey, look, here's the thing that's upsetting me, but obviously I'm giving you just my side,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah,
And
I like to preface something with like a disclaimer of I don't have any good reason for this. It's just you know, a feeling I have that's ugly about a situation. And it's not really a good reason. But I like to like put that pre-qualifier out there because it's not like a data point or a thing. It's just like an instinct or, because it's not really rooted in fact. So there's some truth telling in it, of what is real and what's not real, just for some clarity.
those of you who aren't watching us on YouTube right now, um, Wendy is disappointing me greatly for lack of all of her amazing normal backgrounds because she is on the road right now filming from her hotel room. So I'm getting to stare at her vent instead of the amazing picture of her mom and Roy in the photo behind her head.
It's true. We get it in when we can.
That's 100% flexibility.
That's
All
right.
right. And so I think where we left off last time was we were going to start exploring, what do you do if you're in a situation and voting with your feet immediately, like leaving it, is just not an option? What then? Because we explored a little bit about toxic relationships, we explored a little bit about toxic leadership, and we did discuss that looks different for different people. It can be defined in 100 different ways. We talked about my definition of what a toxic leadership sort of experience might look like, but what happens when you can't leave?
Yeah, because I think that some people, I think it's easy for somebody to say just, leave that situation. I think when I think back to my own childhood, I could very easily say like, my mom should have just left. But I don't think it was easy for when I think about her, as an English second language person coming to the States, with two very small children in a not great relationship with no work. imagine that seemed very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And I fully believe she loves her children and wants to keep her children safe. So, what do her choices look like, to keep her children safe and provide for them? And how does she, well, just leave?
It's really easy for people to give advice when they're not in a situation. And so it's great to say, why are you staying with that? You don't deserve that. Or why are you not just leaving? Well, situations being wildly different, leaving just might not be an option. And sometimes sticking with the devil, is just a little bit quote unquote safer than heading out to the devil you don't know.
And just to be clear, I'm not saying that it is. I'm just
Sure.
saying I imagine in those shoes, it was overwhelming and scary, and that paralyzes decision making.
Yeah, 100%.
So when we're stuck in those situations, in a work environment, in a home environment, with fears that just seem larger than life in our heads, I um, I think having a safe person to kind of share that burden with helps with perspective greatly.
100%. And also, when you think about the fact that sometimes when it's not a personal relationship, if it's a professional relationship, and that person has positional power over you, and you are not in a position where you can leave. Like I mentioned before, there might have been financial obligations, you might be in a contract of some kind.
Right.
Like walking away is just not an option. And if the person that is causing you grief is in a position of power over you, then what?
Mhm. And I think sometimes those narratives in our head get the best of us because it's like, I don't know that anybody would believe me
Mhm.
that this situation is as bad as it is. And I think that again is overwhelming. And I don't know, I can tell you that I would feel stuck.
Sure. And I
And
think
so
there's kind of a bifurcated path here that we can kind of pull thread on is one side of it is if it truly is like toxic, like illegal, like there are things happening that are creating a hostile work environment.
you're unsafe.
Yeah, yeah. Oftentimes there are channels, like ethics channels in civilian sector or equal channels like in military sector where you truly can go and express that, hey, here's some of the things that are going on, but it's really important to have appropriate documentation. What's happening? When did it happen? Um, but then sometimes those systems, they are designed to support you, to help you, to save you, but don't always, right?
They're commanders programs. And
Sure. Yeah.
some sometimes that, is still a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, or if you're talking about like, sometimes if a person can't afford, for example, to get their child mental health help, and you go to the state and you say, hey, look, my health insurance doesn't cover this. What might you be able to help me with? I have actually known personally situations where the state came back with, well, we can't do anything for you. That's a private matter. But if the individual was a member of the state or in the state's control, then we could help you. And so you relinquish like ownership, guardianship of that individual to the state, and it just gets worse. It just gets worse. They get thrown into a system that's supposed to take care of them, and they are left kind of floundering in the wind, suffering all kinds of atrocities. So, I mean, what happens when those systems don't work the way they should?
Yeah, and so when we're thinking about, is the grass greener on the other side? It sure looks a lot greener.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so we start to get a very, like that tunnel vision because everything seems like chaos. And so how do we start watering the grass to actually make it greener?
Right. And so if we put a pin in that and talk about the other side of that bifurcated trail, and we say that that looks a little bit like it's not actually toxic, but it is almost unbearable. Like there are just people who make it an awful place to work. They're disagreeable. They are not good teammates or partners. They are miserable leaders. They don't know what they're doing. They have no emotional intelligence. Maybe the list could just go on. I think that if the situation is that, the answer might be the same on both sides. Like, where do you have control? Franklin Covey often says, like, you have the circle of concern, circle of control, and the circle of concern. These are the things you can actually do something about, but these are the things that you'll worry about all day if you keep worrying about it. But if you focus on these things, they will often start to impact some of these other things. But I think that my best thought on this is Viktor Frankl's idea of, you have 100% control over your own mind, right? And so I think that once, what was that thing where they used to try to get you to not think about the white bear? Somebody would show you a picture of a white bear, and then they would tell you, don't think about the white bear, and you'd move on to something else. And the more you tried to not think about the white bear, the more that's all you would think about.
Was picturing it.
Yeah, because your brain says, don't think about the white bear, doing something else. Wait, remember to not think about the white bear while you're doing something else. Wait, are you still not thinking about the white bear? Which means essentially you're
You're
thinking
still, you're dwelling on it.
100%. And so I think trying to find the area that you actually have control over something and focus on what you can do about that could really give you back some power where you feel powerless.
Yeah. So what do the action steps look like? I think you brought up some documentation, like, have I done my part in this? Have I continued to do right for what I can do? Um, have I reached out to the appropriate places where I can?
And have I attempted at least to have a sit down face to face conversation with an individual and say, look, this isn't about you as a person, because if ever you make something about a person, they are going to get defensive and they're going to hate it.
Mhm.
You have to make it about a behavior or a thing. Like, this thing makes it really difficult for me to do XYZ, and I need to know if there's a way we can work on this thing, right?
Yeah, I think whenever like this process is failing us right now, or the way this rolls out isn't working well.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes, though, let's just say a person in a position of power has made it clear that everything will be done their way or this way. Like, okay, like, as long as that's not illegal or immoral, because that goes back to the first side, time to go report that. Maybe you just do it. And I know that sometimes that's wholly unsatisfying. I know that sometimes that is makes you feel a little bit micromanaged, or it makes you feel like you have no autonomy, like you're just a person putting a cog on the wheel as it goes past you on the assembly line. But if you can do that, preserve some of your mental strength, allow yourself to have a little bit of happiness, take out some of the burden that's weighing on you until you've gotten to the point that you have saved up enough money, finished your education,
Mhm.
completed your contract, whatever it is, so that you can vote with your feet.
Yeah. You remember How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days? And she's like, as long as I do it her way, eventually I'll get to write whatever I want. And so she did her how-to articles for a while. And then when she got to the last article, she was like, I'm never going to get to write about Kyrgyzstan. And she's like, no, you can write whatever you want. You can write about, Botox or lipo or whatever. And she was like, so she did her last article, and, her editor was like, well, it wasn't what I was expecting, but it's better. It was better than what she was expecting. And then Andy was ready to move on.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so she did it her way until she was ready
Yep.
and found her feet.
Yep. So sometimes when you have no control, you look for the area you do have control. So my control might say, right now, I can actually just acquiesce to this thing that they are having me do the way that they want it done, even if it's completely vanilla and uninteresting, or maybe not the best way, but right now they get to say the way. And then once I have shored up my exit plan and I have an ability to exit, I exit.
It's time.
Yeah.
Yeah. That wasn't an unsafe environment. That just wasn't what she wanted.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. But
Yeah.
I think that, again, there's a difference between unsafe and unsavory, right? Like, if it's unsafe, like, that's a time when you've got to cut your losses or you've got to go talk to the next level pick of somebody. I bet us the number of times that we discount the fact that someone else above us just doesn't know uh, is pretty high. So I would bet to say that if it's bad, you should just go say that.
Yeah, it's hard though.
Sure. Yeah, not
Yeah.
discounting that at all. And it's really hard, especially if you have aspirations of growth, of development, of promotion. If you had put a lot of time, effort, and energy into a company or a relationship, like, there's that old adage, like, how long do you stick with a mistake just because you took so long making it, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, I mean, I think sometimes you just have to make a decision, like, do I sit silently and suffer if it's truly like illegal, immoral? No, don't go tell somebody else. But if it's one of those things that it's not illegal or immoral, but it just is unsavory and it sucks, like, again, maybe you stick with it until you can walk away.
That's where I think we talked about this on the last episode too. Have I done my part to communicate? And then if I have, make my plan and make my plan of how I'm going to move on.
Yeah, 100%. But
Mhm.
I think that in the interim, right, like you're working for somebody and they have made it quite clear that you're going to do it their way, or you're in a relationship and they have made it quite clear that you're not going to contribute the same way as you, whatever. I think that as long as you like change your mindset and you say, hey, look, I'm going to breathe deep through these things and I'm just going to do it. Um, and I'm
And
going to do it that I'm allowed to do to the very best of my ability so it continues to demonstrate appropriately on my character, on my capability, on my work ethic, on my commitment to this relationship, whatever. Then you'll know you've done everything you could do. And anybody actually looking in would still be able to see the hard work that you're putting in. But, Wendy, what about reprisal? What if that individual then, I don't know, puts it on your annual performance review that you just, didn't meet the mark, you like,
you still have room for improvement.
we might be speaking from experience, right? What do you do then? What do you just give up? Do you throw your hands in the air and walk away from
I mean,
everything?
this goes back to your point, like I can't control that. And so, you know, hypothetically speaking, you know, I just I couldn't control it and it is what it is, right? I knew everything that I did and I just, what am I going to do about that?
Yep.
And so um you just move on with that. I mean, I have all of my documentation of everything that I've done and in the like I really believe this in the long run things work find a way to work themselves out because to your point your character how you respond to things people will always know
Mhm.
and they did. I mean, I hope that's the case and it may take a long time.
Yeah.
I can tell from my experience in both of the situations that I found myself in things found a way to work themselves out and it took some time but people's things caught up to them.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
wasn't because I said something about it. I mean, I went to the individuals themselves and said my piece, and then my own character and how I behaved through actions was my character.
Yeah.
And I moved on from my personal relationship. I moved on from my professional relationships, and things caught up to those individuals.
Did they? Mm. So I will tell you from my own experience, in a personal relationship, I would watch certain injustices occur to the other person. And I would say, you should say something about it. You should do something about that because I would do it. I would just go say it. They need to know that that's not okay. And the other person would say, it'll all come out in the wash. It'll all come out in the wash. And I'm like, no, but it's an injustice. It's not right. It's not fair. And they would say, it'll all come out in the wash. And where me, I want to attack a thing head on. This individual wanted to play the long game. And I will tell you, at the end of the game, it all came out in the wash, and the injustices and all of those things were made quite apparent uh, to the person on the receiving end. And they were like, oh, it wasn't, it wasn't quite what I thought it was. And I can't be more specific because it's not my story to tell, but it was just one of those things that the whole time I was very insistent that you should go tell that individual to cut it out. And the person in my relationship was like, no, I won't do it, because if I do that, then I am just lowering myself to their level. And it will all come out in wash. And man, alive, it sure did. It did.
I saw a recent something that went down with somebody's career who is choosing to retire, and I admired how she framed the retirement about choosing not to accept the next level promotion, or not promotion, next level opportunity, that she's choosing to hang it up. And I appreciated that because a lot of people choose not to, you know, or I'm sorry, a lot of people choose to retire because they're not getting another opportunity. And so I was just thinking, like, I'm glad that she made it clear this was a choice, and so it just, because it tells people it's okay to leave.
That's right.
It's okay to say, like, I've had a great time and I'm tired, and like it's time to move on,
Yeah.
because it's my choice.
Sometimes accepting that next level something is condoning the way that system, that process, those people are working, even when it isn't working.
Yeah, and so I just appreciated that it was very clear that she had choices.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I was like, that was well crafted.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I think all the time about how we mentioned earlier that it's real easy to tell somebody else what they should do. You should just go talk to them. You should just tell them to screw off. You should just like quit. It's real easy to give somebody else that advice when you're not in their position, or when you haven't had to face their realities. Because it doesn't matter how similar things are, whether they're siblings, whether they're whatever. The situation is never exactly the same, right?
Yeah, no,
And
I agree.
so I love just the idea of trying to encourage someone to like find your own inner strength, learn some great breathing technique, figure out the area you have control, even if it means to acquiesce to something that maybe doesn't fill your soul, until you are able to have gathered all of your stuff, packed all your bags, and walk away with a plan.
Yeah, and I will tell you, I'm so grateful for like I say it all the time, but I'm so grateful for the friendships that I have that have poured into me to give me that kind of strength, to get through the little hurdles, the big hurdles, and help me have strength for walking away. You know,
And you know what's funny? Funny, not funny, not funny, haha. The number of people who I have met in my life who, when I first look at them, it's like, man, you are beautiful, you're strong, you're self contained and controlled, you are able to pay for your way through things, like, and then you talk to them, you're like, how did you get it all together, how is it so wonderful? And they're like, you don't even see the turn under hem that's like being held together with safety pins. Like it just looks prettier than it is. I say that all the time. I stole it from Clueless, where it's like it's a total Monet, right? Like from far away it's
yeah.
absolutely beautiful, but up close it's a big hot mess.
Hmm.
I think that sometimes when we talk about the grass being greener, it is just our impression of what we see on the surface, or what we can see from our lens, or if things are bad on our side, looking over there, someone else's just might look better. But I promise you, everybody has their own challenges. Everybody's facing something.
Yeah, if it's green, there's just lots of fertilizer.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah, I don't necessarily believe that there is this perfect something for everybody. I feel like even if it's beautiful and copacetic for a minute, give it another minute and it'll find its way into some tumult. Like, we're humans, it's life. That's what happens.
Life is hard.
Yeah. And people who aren't fighting something means they're not doing anything worth fighting for.
Yeah, I think it's just life is hard. You were brought up something about the system and kids being thrown in the system, and I was just thinking about, gosh, this young girl who's, you know, where you're talking about childcare, and you get childcare as a benefit as long as your kids are in school, and she was in school, and this assault had happened, and then the assault happened in school, so she's not in school anymore. But now she doesn't have benefits, so she can't get the health care that she needs.
Ah, head
It
trauma.
like right. And so like how do we make these better? You
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And so it's like when you mentioned that about, the putting people in the system, we try to make it better, right? But then like it's like we the system is it's
Yeah.
just broken. And so life is just hard.
Yeah. And so I think to culminate this, because we could talk about this all day, we could keep going, but we can't, is just one, you know, decide if it truly is toxic or illegal. If it is, get your ducks together and report it. If it isn't, maybe stick with it on their terms until you can leave, if that's still your choice. But I think three, like a lot of our injustices are just exacerbated in our mind, right? Like, we have taken something that we don't like, and now every time we come near it, that's all we ever see. Like, we can't unsee it. It's like when I buy a Toyota, then all of a sudden every car I see on the road is a Toyota. Like, my focus is on it. And so the same thing is true. Like, once something sucks, like, all you can do is find the suck. It's just easier to notice. And so sometimes I think we just have to reframe, refocus, take a deep breath, and try to find our own happiness until we have the ability to change our situation.
Yeah, I think if we do keep dwelling on it, it's just gonna keep eating at us. And not that, you want to learn from things and you want to try not to find ourselves in those situations again. And I don't think that people should just, not be held accountable for things. But I think that it will just eat away at my soul if I keep thinking about hard things.
Yeah.
And I don't want that hard thing to keep hurting my soul.
Yeah.
And so it's easy for me to say those words, much harder to execute. So, um, work in progress, right?
But a heart wound can be a lot like a physical wound, that if it's healing and you pick the scab, it's going to bleed again and it's going to have to start healing all over again, right? So if we keep picking that scab by revisiting the suck, it's never going to get better. Sometimes we have to just let that thing heal so that we can start to get past it.
I'll tell you, I remember thinking like, I wish I had never been in this certain situation. But then like, I also thought if I had never like walked down this path, I might never had met you. And I can't imagine a life without you.
I agree 100%. I don't want it. I don't want it.
And
Okay.
so that's my, like, I can't imagine life without you. So thank God.
Yeah. That's resilience, honey. That is resilience, right? The finding the good even from the bad. The trying to see, like, even though all this crap happened, even though everything was ugly and meh, like, what did I glean? What did I learn? What did I take away? What good might have come out of it, even if you didn't find the good until after it?
Yeah. That doesn't make that thing a good thing, but I found a good thing from it.
100%. Okay.
Yeah.
All
Mhm.
right, y'all. Well, obviously, we love having the opportunity to talk to you. We hope you're still tuning in. Know that you can find us on YouTube. You can check us out anywhere you listen. You can look up all of our previous episodes on orangegumpodcast.com, or you can send us a message if you want to on orangegumpodcast@gmail.com. And as always, we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, y'all.